There are two different bridles basically. The easiest way to do it is a gag bridle. Gag bit is made, broken in the middle, and there are various ones. This is just this one actually is sort of a fixed mouthpiece that doesn't slide, but they make them that the gag will slide on them. This is for a horse with a very light mouth. You can add a straight rein or a draw rein there. And basically with the draw rein, you can hold a horse together a little bit better. Now, this is, I say, is for a horse with a very good mouth, which is basically all we want, but not always happens, and then you'll get into some different bits. Some horses like some bits better than other bits, and so you have to experiment to a certain degree. We start most everything with a broken snaffle just to break them and to begin with them, and then you evolve into, usually myself, into a gag. A gag is probably the most popular bit in polo with draw reins. There's a Barry gag, which is basically designed by Harold Barry, by the way. It's two pieces. The concept behind that was to get a horse to flex, and it was designed for that. And some people think that it's a severe bit. All bits are as severe as the hands that are on the other end of it. So, you know, a lot of people, I think the biggest mistake you can make with a young horse is to underbit them. And that's the biggest mistake that everybody makes, because they think they're being kind to the horse's mouth. If you're pulling on a horse's mouth hard because you don't have enough bit, you're going to do more damage than if you're very light with a stronger bit. So, and I read this from Ray Harrington, that the worst thing you can do for a young horse is underbit them. And I'm a sincere believer in that, and it's worked well for me in my career. So basically, just a normal gag. There are also ones that have a twist in them that make them a little bit more severe, stronger. I like those as well. And that's about, those two types of gags are virtually the only ones that I use. And then you have a curb bit, which, as we know, works on the bars of a horse. And if you stick your finger in a horse's mouth, be careful you don't get bit, but on the bottom where this sits, there's a gap between their teeth here and their teeth there, and that's called the bars. The bars is actually bone with skin on it, and it obviously has nerves. And what happens is, the chain goes in the back. The chain is not what creates the pressure. Well, it does create the pressure, but where they feel the pressure is on their bars. And so when you pull back like this is pulling against it, and it sort of pulls down on their bars. You have to be careful with pellums, because, and people don't really understand, all of a sudden they'll say, God, my horse is bleeding from the mouth, what's happened? Well, a lot of times you've cut their bars, and you have to be very careful about that. And that's from being too heavy-handed. But some horses are more comfortable with just a straight, or with a bar across their mouth that sits on their bars than they are with a broken bit, for example, and they might sort of be playing with their tongue or whatever. And so you have to kind of try and see which they prefer. Now the third bit's a double bridle, which there's a misconception about it that you can stop a strong horse with it. It wasn't designed for that. A double bridle in the days when I started with the generations before me, the great horsemen, the Barrys and Tommy Wayman and Billy Wayman and all the guys that I learned from Ray Harrington, a double bridle they loved, because basically you're riding them on the snaffle, but you have the curb if you need it. So generally what I'll do is, with draw reins, I'll have my draw rein shorter than my curb rein, so that when I go to stop, the first thing the horse gets is to bring their head in a bit with the snaffle, and then if they're still a little heavy, the curb will come into play the same way a pellum does on the bars, and then you get a little bit more pressure, and generally they'll back off of that. But what you must remember with a horse's mouth is that they're trained so that when they feel pressure, they stop, and then the pressure is released and given away. And what you see with a lot of people is they keep pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, and the horse is like, I'm trying to stop, but they don't understand. I mean, but if you pull and they give to you and stop, slow down, you have to release so that they understand that. And so it's very, very much being coordinated with your hand. And releasing pressure and giving pressure as to what you want to do. They feel the pressure to go right and left with the reins on the side of their neck. If they're going to the left, it's on the right side, and opposite going to the right side. You must understand how a horse receives its commands, and that's through the bit and through the reins. And when they do what they're supposed to do, you have to take that pressure away, because that's what they remember. Now, if you're in a game, it's oftentimes really difficult to, be that talented and coordinated to do that. But don't keep pulling and pulling and pulling. Try to understand what they're trying to understand. So those are basically the 3 bits, and with the double bridle is one of my favorites. Although I tend to show horses less in it, because people see a double bridle and they go, oh my God, that horse has got a double bridle on it. Which is a myth, and it's not true. And but I try to go with what bridle suits the horse, not what bridle suits somebody's opinion of a horse. But basically, if you're watching all polo, you're going to see primarily gags and pellums.